And because it isn't as big, but it is a double, it's worth £60,000.
Gosh. Well, it's unbelievable.
What if an ordinary-looking sculpture sitting quietly in someone's home was actually worth millions and powerful enough to turn its owner into a millionaire overnight? Welcome to Antique Discoveries. Today, we're counting down the rarest and most valuable sculptures ever uncovered on Antiques Roadshow. From forgotten bronze figures and ancient religious statues to bold modern masterpieces, these objects arrive looking like simple decorations, but soon revealed famous artists, hidden foundry marks, extraordinary histories, and life-changing valuations. And with every step toward number one, the discoveries become rarer, the stories become more unbelievable, and the prices rise even higher. So subscribe, ring the bell, and let's reveal the hidden sculptures that shocked everyone.
I would value it at somewhere around $20,000 to $30,000.
Oh my gosh. I could just cry. I had no idea.
It's a wonderful, wonderful object.
Number 1. Antony Gormley, Angel of the North Bronze Maquette. Taking the top spot in today's countdown is a sculpture that looks much smaller than the famous monument people recognize. It is not 20 meters tall or standing over the landscape of northern England. This bronze figure can fit inside a room. But it is not a simple souvenir. This small sculpture holds the beginning of one of Britain's most iconic public artworks.
Coming to Gateshead, I was greatly looking forward to looking at Angel of the North, but I could have sworn it was a bit bigger than this. But it is an original.
That is an original, but that existed before the real thing. And the real thing is 20 times bigger than that and 20 times broader.
The reason this piece matters is because of what it represents. It is a maquette, a preparatory model created before the final sculpture was built. Artists use these models to test form, scale, and how a major artwork will eventually appear. Antony Gormley's finished Angel of the North was installed in Gateshead in 1998. The final version stands 20 meters tall, stretches 54 meters across its wings, and weighs around 100 tons. But before that massive steel figure became a landmark, the idea existed in smaller versions like this one.
So just to clarify, this is the bronze maquette for the 20-meter-high steel version. The preparatory work that Gormley, the sculptor, Antony Gormley, used to persuade you and others to commission this great object.
Well, it was the maquette, which is one of a number, but was the final one.
That detail completely changed its importance. This was not a copy made after the Angel of the North became famous. It was connected to the moment when the entire project was still being created. The sculpture was controversial at first because of its huge size and unusual appearance, but over time it became a symbol of the industrial past, transformation, and identity of Northeast England. And that connection turned this small bronze model into something far more valuable.
So now we come to the subject of valuation, and how do you value something like this? Another version did sell very recently. Admittedly, it was taller, and it wasn't of bronze, and that made about £2 million, or rather a little bit over that.
Yeah.
So I think on the basis that this is half the size, I would comfortably value it at £1 million.
£1 million for a sculpture small enough to keep indoors. But the value was never just about the bronze or its size. It represented the early stage of an idea that became one of Britain's most recognizable artworks. The Angel of the North became a giant landmark seen by millions. And this small maquette captured the moment before that icon truly took flight. Number 2. Tang Dynasty Marble Lion. After a modern art icon worth millions of pounds, the countdown travels back more than 1,000 years to an object whose true value was unknown even to the family who owned it. For decades, this marble lion was simply seen as something their grandparents brought back from their travels in China. They knew it might be special, but no one expected this familiar family piece to be an ancient masterpiece.
My grandparents picked it up. They traveled a lot in China.
And when were they in China?
Probably the early part of the century.
Okay, where have you had this since then?
The family history made the story interesting, but one major question remained. When was this lion actually created? At first, it was believed to possibly come from the Ming dynasty, but the expert quickly noticed signs pointing to something even more impressive. From the quality of the marble to the way the body was carved, every detail suggested this was far more than a simple decorative object. And the expert's first reaction revealed just how special it was.
Okay, well, I'll start out by saying when this came up, I could barely.
I could tell.
It's fantastic. This is truly. Oh, sorry, I'm all worked up. This is among the finest examples of Chinese art that we have seen on the roadshow.
That excitement was not only about the sculpture's appearance. In ancient Chinese art, lions represented power, protection, and strength. But what truly separated this piece was the craftsmanship. The artist transformed a solid piece of stone into a figure that felt full of weight, movement, and life. After examining it more closely, the expert discovered that the original belief about its age was not impressive enough.
Now, one of the things he was wrong about is it's not Ming Dynasty. This dates from the golden period of Chinese art, which is called the Tang Dynasty, between the 6th century and the 9th century.
Wow.
The lion was not from the Ming Dynasty. It was much older. The Tang Dynasty is considered one of the greatest periods in Chinese art, when sculpture reached an extraordinary level of refinement. With its age, rarity, craftsmanship, and clear family history, this marble lion became an incredible discovery. And the final valuation left the owner completely surprised.
Now, the value I gave you is an auction estimate value. An insurance figure on this would be somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000, probably toward the high end. I would say around $250,000.
Wow.
The name of the artist may be lost, but more than 1,000 years later, their skill still survives in every detail of this marble lion. Number 3. Child Swan Sleigh. Continuing the countdown is an object originally made for children, but its appearance looks more like a sculpture than an ordinary snow sled. With a carved wooden swan shape, a raised neck, and detailed craftsmanship, this piece immediately stands out. The owner only bought it at a rummage sale. But she had no idea she had discovered one of the rarest sleds ever seen on Roadshow.
I got it at a rummage sale about 7 years ago, and I paid about $35 for it.
What we have here is the child's sled. 30 years ago, we would have said it's unique. But about 20 years ago, another sled, same form, surfaced.
From a purchase of only $35, the story quickly became much more surprising. This was not just an antique toy. The maker transformed the entire sled into the shape of a swan, combining function with folk art. What amazed the expert even more was that he had already seen an almost identical example in his own collection. And the smallest details proved a special connection between the two pieces.
I know how the feathers are carved. I know the unmistakable metal brace that's brought up the side of the wing, same exact curved metal that's in the other sled. This indentation here, the way the wing is scooped out to give it dimension, those things are identical. After that, it's click, click, click. Everything just falls into place.
Those matching details suggested they could have come from the same craftsman or the same workshop. Even without a signature, the carving style, structure, and small design choices became the maker's unique fingerprint. Finding a second example did not make it less rare. Instead, it confirmed that this was a true piece of folk art, not just a random decorative object. And when something is rare, visually impressive, and desired by collectors, its value can rise far beyond expectations.
I would value it at somewhere around $20,000 to $30,000.
Oh my gosh. I could just cry. I had no idea.
It's a wonderful, wonderful object.
From a $35 sled, this discovery suddenly became a treasure worth tens of thousands. But the story did not end with the appraisal. After thinking about it, the owner realized the value of the sled could help her family's future in a different way.
She said, "Are you really serious about that price? And my grandchildren are going to college, and we could use some money for the college fund, so would it be possible for you to represent the sled and sell it?" And I said, absolutely. I sold it to a private collector, and can't disclose the exact price, but it's good to say that it was north of $50,000.
Number 4. Harry Keller Illusion Head. Continuing the countdown is a mysterious object from the world of stage magic. It no longer has its original mechanism, and no one knows exactly what audiences saw it do over a century ago. The owner bought this wooden head because of a fascinating story connected to one of the biggest names in magic history.
Found this online, and basically an antique store in London that didn't specialize in magic, but just like high-end antiques. They had this head. They acquired it from an artist who acquired it in New York in about the 60s. And they bought it with the understanding that it had belonged to Houdini and it was used in illusions.
A connection to Houdini could make any magic prop special. But further research revealed a different possibility. The facial features and historical images suggested this head was actually connected to Harry Keller, one of America's most influential magicians before Houdini.
You look at pictures and posters of Harry Keller, and there's a pretty astonishing resemblance. I'm right there with you. I believe it is Harry Keller. Harry Keller is known as the Dean of American Magicians. He was born in 1849 and had kind of an odd career beforehand.
During the late 19th century, Keller was famous for large theatrical illusions using custom-made equipment and complex stage effects. Few of these original props still exist today. And because Keller had a close connection with Houdini, part of the original story may still have been true. The remaining question was how this strange object was actually used.
At a guess, my thought is probably used for a spiritualism trick of some sort, a levitating head of some sort. Do you have any idea how you might use it?
We've kind of think that it could be a spirit cabinet type thing.
The head may have been part of an illusion inspired by spiritualism, where supernatural-looking effects amazed audiences. But magic props are difficult to research because their secrets were carefully protected. Over time, many methods disappeared with the performers who created them. That mystery, combined with its rarity and craftsmanship, made the piece incredibly valuable.
But I would have no problem putting an insurance estimate of $60,000 to $80,000 on it.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Ha.
And I'm sure that there are a few people who would probably pay much more.
Bought for around $5,000, this mysterious wooden head received an insurance value of up to $80,000. But beyond the price, it represents an era when magic, theater, and mystery were deeply connected. More than a century later, the illusion may be gone. But the secret behind this remarkable piece still remains. Number 5. Folk Art Root Sculpture. Continuing the countdown is a piece that was not made from bronze, precious stone, or any expensive material. At first glance, it simply looks like a twisted tree root with unusual shapes. There is no signature and no famous artist attached to it. But the moment the owner saw it, she knew this was not an ordinary object.
I think I started to dance around, and my niece describes it as the happy dance because it was something so peculiar that I knew it was special.
A piece of folk art has to have a lot of things going for it to be great. It has to draw you in.
Yes.
And that's exactly what this does.
Before it was discovered, the piece had been sitting in a garage in South Jersey for years. No one knew exactly who created it or what its original purpose was. But in the world of folk art, the most important thing is not always a famous name. It is the imagination and ability to turn ordinary materials into something completely unique. From the natural roots, the maker found the shapes of snakes, birds, cats, and other creatures hidden inside. And the longer people looked, the more details they discovered.
It has a great old finish on it, and it's kind of like those spooky trees in the old tales. It fascinates me, it drives me crazy, and it kind of scares me too.
That strange mix of fascination and mystery is what makes this piece special. It was not designed to look perfect or traditionally beautiful. Instead, the artist kept the natural twists and forms of the roots, transforming them into their own world. Experts believe the piece was likely created around 1890 or 1900. Despite some signs of age, its condition and incredible detail made it an impressive example of folk art.
There's a little bit of wear up here, but I tell you something, to a non-folk art person, this is probably ugly as a mud fence. But to the people that collect folk art, it's a thing of great beauty. So much detail.
This is exactly the kind of artwork that can divide opinions. Some people may only see a strange piece of wood. But for folk art collectors, that originality and personality are what create its value. No two roots grow the same way, making this sculpture almost impossible to recreate. That rarity led to a surprising valuation.
And as far as value is concerned, we really agonized over that part of it.
Okay.
I would say a good auction estimate would be $30,000 to $50,000.
That's incredible.
From a tree root forgotten in a garage to an estimate of $30,000 to $50,000, its value did not come from the original material. It came from the imagination of an unknown artist who saw something extraordinary where others may have seen nothing. A strange sculpture, but that uniqueness is exactly what made it unforgettable. Number 6. Ancient Egyptian alabaster canopic jar with IMSETY head. Continuing the countdown is a jar that was not created for everyday life. Its appearance may look like an ancient decorative object, but its true purpose was connected to one of the most important rituals of ancient Egypt. For years, the family only knew it as something their grandfather purchased during his travels. But they had no idea they were keeping an artifact with thousands of years of history.
My grandparents traveled extensively pre-war and obviously ended up in Cairo at one point. And my grandfather, who loved to collect beautiful things, bought this, the canopic jar.
Yeah, well, I collect scarabs, but I've never had the luck to find one of these.
The grandfather bought the jar for its beauty, but ancient Egyptians created objects like this with a much deeper meaning. Canopic jars were used during mummification to protect the important organs of the deceased. Each jar in a set of 4 represented one of the sons of Horus, serving as a guardian for the journey into the afterlife.
But as you know, as you've just said, it's a canopic jar. And you probably know, these jars were put in the tombs of embalmed bodies with the embalmed vital organs inside each one of them, because there were 4.
The human-shaped lid shows this figure is IMSETY, the protector associated with the liver. But the value of the jar came from more than just its age. The alabaster material, craftsmanship, and especially its clear ownership history all made it more significant. The family even kept the original receipt from Cairo, an important detail for an artifact thousands of years old.
This is the receipt, isn't it, for it?
Yes.
From what date was this?
The receipt helped prove that the jar had been in the family since before World War II. For Egyptian antiquities, provenance like this can make a major difference. After examining it, the expert identified the piece as likely coming from the 19th dynasty, an era connected with famous pharaohs such as Ramesses II. That meant this jar could be more than 3,000 years old.
This type is usually from the 19th dynasty. That's about 1290 to 1180 BC. That's the time of Ramses and Set. So if it's confirmed, which I'm sure it is, that it's from that date, it could make £4,500, and it could possibly make more.
But the most fascinating part is its journey. An object once created to protect something precious inside an ancient Egyptian tomb was eventually protected by one family for generations. More than 3,000 years later, its story continues. Number 7. Martin Brothers Double Grotesque Bird Jar. Continuing the countdown are ceramic pieces that were never designed to look perfect or traditionally elegant. With oversized beaks, unusual eyes, and almost human-like expressions, these birds have always divided opinions. But that strange appearance is exactly what made Martin Brothers pottery one of the most recognizable styles in ceramics.
There are fewer things more distinctive than Martin Brothers pottery. And I think if we went round this crowd here and asked them their opinion, it would be a very mixed and split audience between love, loathe, and plain curiosity. So I have to ask, of those 3, which are you?
Martin ware was never created to please everyone. Its appeal comes from the combination of skilled craftsmanship and unusual imagination. For the owner, her love for these pieces started long before the market fully recognized their value.
Well, I was left a very small vase, which isn't here, many years ago, and I fell in love with Martin ware.
But in the 70s, whilst Martin Brothers was beginning to become recognised, it was still derided by many people.
At that time, many people still considered these ceramic creatures too strange, but he saw personality in every expression. Martin Brothers was a pottery workshop run by the 4 Martin brothers, known for handmade creations unlike anything else. Their famous grotesque bird jars were more than decorative objects. Each bird felt like its own character, with a mood, attitude, and story.
antiques. And, you know, this chap here, this pair of birds, just turn it round, they're giving each other a hug. These boys are friends.
That sense of life is what made Martinware increasingly desirable among collectors. Over time, the features once considered strange became the exact reasons people wanted them. The glaze, expression, rarity, and condition could all greatly affect the value. And in this collection, the biggest surprise was the double bird jar.
It's a great looking pair, good colour, but it isn't as big as that one at the end of the day, and we've got to factor that in. And because it isn't as big, but it is a double, it's worth £60,000.
Gosh. This pair alone was valued at £60,000, bringing the collection to an incredible level. But the most remarkable part is that the owner did not collect them because of a trend. He loved them when many people still did not understand Martinware's value. The strange faces, unusual expressions, and once controversial designs became what made them unforgettable. Sometimes the greatest value begins with seeing beauty where others do not. Number 8. EUGÈNE LANCERAY Russian Bronze Cossack Equestrian Sculpture. Continuing the countdown is a Russian bronze sculpture showing a powerful Cossack warrior on horseback. But what makes this piece special is not only the quality of the sculpture. Behind it is a family story from early 20th century St. Petersburg, when the owner's great-grandfather faced a serious conflict inside his factory.
My great-grandfather ran a cotton mill in St. Petersburg. In the early 20th century, there were a lot of industrial strikes, and he was forced in 1905 to intervene in a dispute between the workers and management over the working hours. The normal method of resolving disputes in those days was to send the Cossacks in.
At that time, Cossacks were often used to control industrial strikes. But instead of solving the problem through force, Joseph Hadfield made a different choice. He worked to create communication between the workers and management, and that decision transformed the image of the Cossack soldier into a completely different symbol.
And he set up a workers' council to mediate and to reinstate the workers' rights.
And here we have the plaque along the front that says, "You did without them."
The words, "you did without them," changed the entire meaning of the sculpture. It was not celebrating the use of power. It remembered a moment when conflict was avoided. Artistically, the sculpture is connected to EUGÈNE LANCERAY, known for his work showing cavalry, animals, and life in the Russian Empire. The details of the rider, clothing, and movement of the horse show the quality of a high-level bronze casting.
So when he retired in 1907, he was given that.
I see, and there's actually a plaque on the back presented to Joseph Hadfield, your great-grandfather, Esquire, by the Office and Hospital of the Nevsky Cotton Mills.
The inscription on the back confirmed the family history and created a special provenance for the sculpture. However, one detail directly affected its value. Before bringing it to Roadshow, the owner polished the bronze surface, accidentally removing part of the original patina that collectors highly value.
It's not necessarily a good thing to do with antique bronzes. It takes away the original patina, which does sadly affect the value. Which brings us neatly onto the question of their worth. This one is probably in the region at auction of £2,000 to £4,000.
Although polishing reduced its market value, it could not remove the history behind the piece. This sculpture does not only represent a Cossack warrior, it tells the story of a moment when dialogue was chosen instead of conflict. More than a century later, the message behind this gift still remains. Number 9. Richmond BARTHÉ Bronze Pan Sculpture. Continuing the countdown is a small bronze sculpture with horns, a mysterious expression, and a smile that different people could interpret in completely different ways. It was not purchased at a major auction. The story began when the owner's grandmother accidentally walked into an artist's studio in Jamaica during the late 1960s and discovered the piece while it was still being completed.
My grandmother actually came upon his studio completely by accident while she was vacationing in Jamaica in the late 60s. Found the beginning of this when it was in its infancy and paid a deposit to have it completed.
What made the sculpture special was not only its unusual appearance. The family had a rare provenance. Her grandmother bought it directly from the artist, followed its creation, and kept the letters they exchanged. However, not everyone in the family loved Pan and his strange expression.
My family, to be honest, was not super keen on him. They felt that his leer was a little off-putting. And I was the family member that absolutely loved it.
But that unique personality became part of the sculpture's appeal. The artist behind it was Richmond BARTHÉ, one of the important African-American sculptors of the 20th century. He was known for capturing the human body, emotion, and movement through sculpture. With Pan, the half-human, half-goat mythological figure was not created to look perfect, but to feel alive and unpredictable.
It's very clearly signed here on the back, and I think this depiction of Pan with these little horns is really beautifully done. The modeling is great, the casting is great, and the patina is wonderful.
The clear signature, strong casting quality, beautiful patina, and direct ownership history made this sculpture far more significant. The owner's grandmother originally bought it for $500 in 1969. But as interest in African-American artists grew, the value of works like this changed dramatically.
The market for African-American art has skyrocketed in the last 5 years. And BARTHÉ was one of the leading African-American sculptors of his time. In today's market, in a retail setting, I would put a price of between $15,000 and $25,000.
From a sculpture that some family members once hesitated to keep, Pan was revealed as a piece worth tens of thousands of dollars. But for the owner, the greatest value remained the story behind it. It was a sculpture her grandmother loved, passed through generations, and connected directly to an important artist. Pan's mysterious smile may not appeal to everyone, but that is exactly what made it unforgettable. Number 10. 1924 Paul Troubetskoy Bronze Sculpture. Continuing the countdown is a bronze sculpture that had been in the family for so long that the owner saw it simply as a familiar keepsake. It was not a portrait of a famous historical figure or a piece purchased from a major gallery. It was a sculpture of her mother as a 7-year-old girl in France, but behind it was the story of a renowned international sculptor.
The sitter's my mother. This is 1924. She was 7 years old. It's in France, and she was going to school there. At the time, she was there with her family. Her father came over to do the reconstruction after World War I. He was a lumberman, and the family was over there living in France.
The family was living in France after World War I, during a period when the country was rebuilding. That moment eventually led to the young girl being captured in bronze by a remarkable artist. For years, the family only saw the sculpture as a portrait of their mother. But when the expert examined it more closely, the details on the bronze revealed a much bigger story.
That's a wonderful bronze, such an appealing subject. The artist assigned it here, it's Paul Troubetskoy, who was sort of a fairly colorful character. It's signed and dated 1924 and has a foundry mark here. It's a Paris foundry.
The signature, date, and Paris foundry mark confirmed it was a work by Paul Troubetskoy. He was an internationally connected sculptor known for capturing personality, emotion, and presence in his subjects. Instead of simply recreating a face, Troubetskoy gave his bronze portraits a natural and lifelike quality.
He did animal topics, he did famous personalities, politicians of the time, intellectual thinkers, authors and illustrators, but his real flourishing part of his career was doing society portraits.
Although the sitter was not a famous public figure, the sculpture still carried many important qualities: a clear signature, family provenance, and the craftsmanship of a recognized artist. To the owner, it had always been an image of her mother as a child. But in the art world, it was also a significant Troubetskoy sculpture.
Some of the figures that have come up on the market tend to be less personal in nature and more sort of recognizable, but it still has a considerable value, and if you had to find something by this artist of a comparable scale, you'd expect to pay at retail price in the $20,000 range.
Around $20,000 for a sculpture the family had always viewed simply as part of their memories. But what made it special was that both values could exist together. For collectors, it was a 1924 work by Paul Troubetskoy. For the family, it remained a childhood moment of their mother preserved forever in bronze. Another sculpture by the artist could appear on the market, but this personal story could never truly be replaced. Number 11. Mystery Buddhist Figure. Continuing the countdown is an object that seems easy to identify at first glance. With its golden surface, religious figures, complex decoration, and striking central image, it clearly shows Buddhist influence. But the real question is not what it represents. The bigger mystery is, where was this piece actually created?
Well, it's clearly a Buddhistic figure.
Yeah.
And Buddhistic figures are extremely difficult to attribute as to where they came from. Because like Russian icons, the idea is to keep the things the same as possible throughout generations. But once we start looking at it, maybe there are some clues.
In religious art, symbols are often preserved across generations. This protects the meaning behind the artwork, but it also makes identifying its origin much more difficult. Details such as figures, clouds, patterns, and mythical creatures can appear across many different cultures. So the expert had to look for smaller clues. And one of the first details that stood out was the writing on the piece.
Which is very unusual. I haven't seen that before.
I didn't know that.
But the characters are either North Indian or Tibetan.
At first, these characters suggested a connection to Tibet or northern India. But after a closer look, the craftsmanship started telling a different story. The layers of carved wood, tiny figures, and gold leaf surface all showed an extremely high level of skill. And that opened the door to a completely different possibility.
Now, the quality of the carving, because this is all carved wood,
Yeah.
which has then been gilded, this is gold leaf on here,
Yeah.
is of very, very high quality.
Uh-huh.
Much better quality than one would have expected had it come from Tibet or India.
Uh-huh.
Nor does it say to me China, oddly enough. But when we get back up here again, the quality says to me nowhere else but Japan.
That discovery changed the entire story. The piece may have used Buddhist imagery connected to another region, but the carving technique suggested that it was likely created in Japan. During the late 19th century, Japanese craftsmen were known for producing highly detailed works for both local and international markets. The combination of subject, quality, and craftsmanship turned this object into something far more remarkable.
Because it's Japanese, it's going to be worth more than if were it anything else. More than Chinese, more than Indian, more than Tibetan. I think we're looking at about £10,000 to £15,000.
From a mysterious object displayed at home, the piece was valued at up to £15,000. But the most fascinating part was the journey of discovering its true origin. The characters first pointed experts toward Tibet or northern India. Yet in the end, the finest details in the carving revealed the story of a Japanese craftsman. A single object had preserved traces of different cultures for more than a century. Number 12. Carved wood devil figure. Continuing the countdown is a wooden character with an appearance that feels both frightening and humorous. For many years, the owner simply saw it as a favorite Halloween decoration, placing it on her front porch every October. She purchased it at a local fundraising sale without realizing that this unusual devil figure could actually be a special example of American folk art.
About 25 years ago, I went to a historical society sale where people donated items to keep the historical society going. And I collected Halloween, and I walked in and he was sitting on the floor, and I purchased him. He cost the whole $10. I inquired about who made it, and it was a local gentleman who worked in a factory. And supposedly it was like around 1920 or 1930.
For just $10, she brought home an object with a story far more interesting than its first appearance suggested. The creator was not a famous artist, but possibly a local worker who used his skill and imagination to turn a piece of wood into a figure full of personality. And that freedom and imperfection are exactly what make folk art so fascinating.
This is the epitome of American folk art. Here's a guy who was probably a mill worker along the Monongahela River, local guy.
What makes this devil special is not expensive material or perfect technique. It is the expression and the story left behind by an unknown craftsman. The expert believed the date of around the 1920s or 1930s made sense, a period when devil imagery often appeared in warnings connected to the temperance movement and prohibition.
I think the date is correct for it because we're sort of in the era of prohibition and the big temperance movement. So devils are out there and they're warning you about the evils of drink. It's just one individual's kind of inspiration and humor and capability, and it's just got such personality. It's the beauty of American folk art.
That personality is what transforms something that looked like a simple decoration into an object appreciated by collectors. No two pieces of folk art are exactly the same, because each one reflects the imagination of the individual who created it. And this devil, which had been sitting outside for years, eventually gave its owner a huge surprise.
This piece could probably bring between $4,000 and $5,000.
Wow. Jeez. Well, it sat on my front porch during Halloween for 25 years in October.
From a $10 purchase at a fundraising sale, the wooden devil was valued at up to $5,000. But the most interesting part is that before discovering its true value, the family had already loved it for exactly what it was. It was never locked away in a display case. Instead, it became part of their Halloween tradition for 25 years. A creation by an unknown craftsman ultimately proved that sometimes the strangest objects can become the most unforgettable. Number 13. Ancient Greek Terracotta Mother Goddess Figurine. Continuing the countdown is a small artifact created not from marble or precious metal, but simply from fired clay. At first glance, this goddess figurine may appear simple, but it survived for thousands of years before appearing in an antique shop in Malta. And the biggest question was not just where it was found, but which ancient civilization it truly came from.
Very early figurine of a goddess in terracotta, made, I suppose, originally in Rhodes. Was it found here in Malta?
I managed to buy it from a local antique shop.
Although it was purchased in Malta, the expert believed the piece may have originated from Rhodes based on its style and material. With ancient objects like this, their journey through trade and time can often be extremely complex. But what made this figurine truly special was its incredible age.
I suppose in date, it ought to be, and I think it is, about the 5th century BC. What is that? That's 2,400 years old?
The idea that a terracotta object could survive for more than 2,000 years is surprising to many people. Terracotta may seem fragile, but when fired properly and preserved under the right conditions, it can last through countless generations. The small details on the surface also reveal how ancient craftsmen created pieces like this.
It's in a lovely soft terracotta body, an orangey clay, with very typical vent holes, the holes for the gases to come out during the firing. Otherwise, a hollow figurine would explode unless it has vent holes for the gases to come out.
These small holes were not damage, but an important part of the production process. They show that the craftsman understood how to work with clay, heat, and the hollow structure needed during firing. Even though the figurine is no longer perfect after thousands of years, it still preserves the beauty and story of the ancient world. However, age alone does not determine value. Condition, rarity, and ownership history also play a major role in how collectors evaluate an artifact.
Pounds,
about 20 years
English
ago.
pounds.
And that was about 20 years ago.
£10 seems ridiculously cheap for something this age, even though a bit damaged. In English terms, I suppose one's looking at something worth £140, £150.
A value of around £150 may not be a huge number, but the story behind the object is what makes it remarkable. A simple piece of clay was transformed by the hands of an ancient artist into the image of a goddess and survived for more than 2,400 years. It may not be a treasure worth millions, but it remains a rare connection between people today and a world that disappeared a very long time ago. Number 14. 19th century Sir Geoffrey Hudson figure. Continuing the countdown is a figure wearing armor, carrying weapons, and looking like a warrior who stepped straight out of history. But for many years, this sculpture was not displayed in a museum or an old castle. Instead, it stood inside a pub. The owner believed it represented Sir Geoffrey Hudson, a real figure from the 17th century English court with a truly unusual life story.
He was originally 18 inches tall when he was in the court of Charles I and Queen Henrietta.
Yes.
The idea of the dagger on his side, I understand, was that they used to bake him into an apple pie and he would split the pie open and tumble onto the table and do his little acts.
The story of the pie became one of the most famous tales connected to Hudson. But his life was not only defined by performances inside the royal court. Over time, he was also remembered as a horseman, a fighter, and someone with a life far more eventful than the statue's appearance might first suggest.
But I think Hudson had a much more exciting career than just being the court dwarf, didn't he?
Yes, he was famous horse. He was a famous horseman, I believe, and fought a duel on horseback. He's supposed to have killed a man at some stage.
Well, I understood he also fought in the Civil War.
That history makes the armor and weapons on the figure even more interesting. However, the expert realized this was not a piece created during Hudson's own lifetime. Instead, it was a 19th century artist's interpretation of this historical figure. Some details were surprisingly accurate, while others included more imaginative elements.
If we look at him, he's very much a mixture of ideas. And this is a matchlock of the early 17th century.
This combination of history and imagination is exactly what gives the sculpture its appeal. It is not a direct portrait of Sir Geoffrey Hudson, but a later generation's vision of his extraordinary story. With its large-scale, striking appearance and connection to such an unusual historical character, the figure still holds strong collectible interest.
If one can prove the Sir Geoffrey link, then he would be of great interest to a collector. But of course, he's not a contemporary piece. So the maximum price, I would think, would be about sort of £3,000.
Around £3,000 for a figure that once stood as a familiar centerpiece inside a pub. Its value does not come from being an object that belonged to the real Sir Geoffrey Hudson. Instead, it comes from the way it preserves his image and legend centuries later. Number 15. Frederick Remington, Coming Through the Rye bronze sculpture. Continuing the countdown is a bronze sculpture that could belong to two completely different stories. And to discover the truth, the expert had to examine the smallest details.
Well, I bought it at auction about 3 years ago.
Right, so this is Coming Through the Rye. Do you know much about Remington and his background?
Very little.
Coming Through the Rye is one of the famous works associated with Frederick Remington, an artist known for his depictions of cowboys, horses, and the American West. What makes Remington's bronzes stand out is their incredible sense of movement. He could turn heavy metal into a moment that feels alive and full of action. But just because a sculpture matches the original design does not mean it is an official cast.
There are one or two things I don't like about it. What I don't like is the fact that it doesn't say copyright, nor anywhere, unless I've missed it, can I see the foundry stamp, Roman bronze foundry.
The foundry mark was an important clue, but the experts still noticed several details that raised questions. With valuable bronze sculptures, signatures, copyright marks, casting quality, and even tiny surface details can completely change the story. One particular clue that caught his attention was a wax mark left behind during the casting process.
Yes. That's a drip of wax when it's been cast.
Yes.
I would like to think that Frederick Remington himself, if he'd have seen this, would have had that cleaned off. So there are things that I don't like about it. It doesn't add up.
These unusual details did not prove that the sculpture was a modern reproduction, but they made authentication much more complicated. It could be a decorative bronze, an unofficial cast, or a piece that required deeper research by Remington specialists. And the huge difference between those possibilities is what made this discovery so fascinating.
We have a nice bronze, and irrespective of the price, it's a beautiful thing to look at.
Well, as a decorative object, even if it was brand new, it's got to be £3,000 or £4,000, surely.
If considered only as a decorative sculpture, the bronze could still be worth around £3,000 to £4,000. But if further research proved a special origin, the entire story could change. Sometimes one small detail on the surface of bronze can separate a beautiful object from an extraordinary discovery. Number 16. Gargoyle Pottery Wall Bracket. Continuing the countdown is a monster that had been hanging in a family living room for many years.
This gargoyle has been in my family for really about as long as I can remember. My parents always had it hanging in the corner in the living room. And
its history before entering the family remained a mystery, so the expert had to search for answers through the object itself. This was not a stone gargoyle from an old building. It was a pottery wall bracket created as an interior decoration. By studying the material, style, and marks on the piece, the expert began tracing where it might have been made.
This is most likely Italian. There were many, many different Italian pottery manufacturers, but this has a letter N as part of the mark, and that might refer to Naples.
The letter N could point toward Naples, but it was still only one clue. What truly made the piece stand out was its free modeling, glazed surface, and decorative details that carried a historic feeling. All of these features matched a style that became extremely popular in 19th century Europe.
But it is really a terrific piece. It's hard to put a price on it because I've never seen one, never seen anything like it. But my guess is a retail price would probably be at least $2,000 or $3,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Renaissance revival drew inspiration from historical images such as monsters, mythical creatures, and old architecture. So this gargoyle was not created only to look scary. It was designed to bring personality into a space, almost like a creature watching over the room from above. Even without identifying the exact maker, its unusual appearance and strong visual character made the expert appreciate the piece.
Now, this would be a part of the Renaissance revival movement, which was very popular in the last half of the 19th century in Europe.
From a face that once made a child decorate it with balloons to make it less frightening, the gargoyle was valued at up to $3,000. Sometimes, the very thing that makes an object strange is exactly what makes it unforgettable. Number 17. Japanese Satsuma Dragon Incense Burner. Continuing the countdown is a Japanese ceramic piece with an impressive design featuring a dragon wrapped around its surface. But what makes this koro special is not only the decoration. Hidden behind its small details are incredible craftsmanship and a family story that began with sea voyages more than a century ago.
It would be my great-uncle used to go to sea. He was an engineer, and he brought them all back. It would be the sailing ships that he would be in before the steam came.
And do you know how long that is?
1900.
1900, before 1900.
From the family story, the expert quickly identified the pieces as Japanese Satsuma pottery. This style is known for its distinctive glaze, complex decoration, and detailed hand craftsmanship. But among the entire group of objects, the dragon incense burner was the piece that immediately stood out.
This is a wonderful piece, and the dragon modelling on here is really quite superb. The unexpected thing is the way the whole thing then just lifts off the top. Yes. It's really quite a clever piece of modelling.
The fascinating part is that the dragon was not created only for decoration. In East Asian culture, dragons often represent power, good fortune, and positive energy. On this koro, the artist turned that symbol into part of the object's actual function. When used, the incense smoke itself could become part of the display.
Well, this immediately gives away the function of this object. You put the smouldering essence or whatever it is in there, and the smoke comes out through here. And with some luck, it might also appear to come out through the mouth of the dragon. Now, that is therefore a koro.
That detail is what makes the incense burner feel alive. The dragon does not simply sit on the ceramic surface. It almost appears to awaken when smoke rises from its mouth. The combination of sculptural design, symbolism, and technical skill is why high-quality Satsuma pieces continue to attract collectors. After more than 100 years, the fact that this object still preserves so many fine details makes it even more impressive.
Let's give you some indication of value. The incense burner is around 700 to 1,000, maybe even 1,200 pounds. And the figure on the dragon, well, I would say around 800 to 1,200 pounds. Quite a nice catch for your seafaring great uncle.
And sometimes, a small detail like smoke emerging from a dragon's mouth is enough to reveal the imagination of an artist from over a century ago. Number 18. Akoma Sgraffito Pottery Deer Sculpture. Continuing the countdown is a pottery deer sculpture with a truly unique appearance.
We bought it in New York City probably in the very late 90s. And we found it in a Native American shop that was just behind the Museum of Natural History.
Oh, cool. Tell me what you've learned about the piece. You've done a little bit of research.
I've had a hard time finding information on it, except for what's written on the bottom.
The information found on the bottom of the piece became an important clue. It connected the sculpture to Acoma Pueblo in New Mexico, a community known for a pottery tradition passed down through many generations. But what caught the expert's attention was not only where it came from, it was the special technique used to create all the decoration across the body of the deer.
Now, the other thing that's important to note about this is this technique of decoration. It's not painted, it's called sgraffito, S-G-R-A-F-F-I-T-O, which literally means to scratch away.
Unlike simply painting designs onto the surface, sgraffito requires the artist to carefully scratch away layers of material to reveal the images underneath. Every line requires control, because mistakes made during the process are extremely difficult to hide. This technique transformed the surface of the deer into a space filled with different details, symbols, and stories.
I want to point out some of the fascinating designs, you know, the eagle and the deer, and then there's one on the backside that I really love. And this image over here of this dancer is actually from what I believe to be Bodmer, who was an early artist that traveled in the northern plains.
From the eagle and deer to the image of the dancer, every detail makes the sculpture much more than a simple decorative object. It reflects a combination of skill, inspiration from nature, and cultural elements found in Native American art. And when it came to value, the expert believed the story of this piece might still continue to grow.
Today, in this marketplace, in this economy, it's probably worth about what you guys paid for it, in the $500 to $1,000 in a retail store. As an investment piece, I think it's a great investment, and in the next 10 or 20 years, I think it could be worth a lot more.
Great.
From an object purchased simply because of its unusual appearance, it became a piece carrying a story of creativity, culture, and time. Sometimes the most memorable objects are not always the ones with the highest value today, but the pieces people continue to appreciate for generations to come. Number 19. Staffordshire Porcelain Dog Figure. Continuing the countdown is a collection of porcelain dogs that were once seen as simple decorative pieces around the home. The owner collected them over many years, buying each one because she loved them rather than thinking about their future value.
How many have you got?
Well, 24 or 25.
And do you remember how expensive the last one you bought?
How much I paid?
Yeah.
Well, I think probably 25 years ago I probably paid about, some of the best, about 30.
A large collection does not always guarantee a high value. What matters more is the age, condition, and how desirable each piece is in the current market. With these dogs, the expert quickly recognized that they came from Staffordshire, one of England's most famous centers for ceramics. And some pieces in the collection turned out to be much older than many people would expect.
Do you know which factories? Do you know which porcelain factories you have here?
No.
Most of these dogs were made in Staffordshire, dating to 1830, 1850.
I never see any nowadays.
They are quite rare.
Staffordshire dog figures were once popular decorations in 19th century homes. But after nearly 200 years, examples that have survived in good condition have become much harder to find. And interestingly, some pieces in this collection were not created only for display. They also had a practical purpose.
These are little inkwells, and fortunately they have never been used for ink because, oh no, I'm wrong, look, this one has been used for ink.
These small inkwells reveal the combination of decoration and function found in Staffordshire ceramics. For collectors, details such as the glaze, condition, size, and whether a pair of figures has remained together can all affect the value. And the pieces that were once bought for just a few dozen pounds had reached a completely different level.
I think this inkwell, if you buy one of those at auction today, you will have to spend about £400 for one inkwell. Well, I think that each pair, as we go through here, let's give you an average. Each pair is probably worth between £400 and £700.
What started as a personal hobby had become a Staffordshire dog collection with a surprising value. But the most interesting part is that the owner was never collecting them just to follow the market. She simply chose pieces she genuinely enjoyed many years earlier. And over time, these small porcelain dogs became more than household decorations. They became surviving pieces of 19th century British ceramic history. Number 20. Kashmiri Silverbird Pepper Shaker. Continuing the countdown is a small silver bird that looks like a charming decoration for the dining table. But behind its simple appearance is an object that has been passed down through several generations of the same family. And what makes this collection even more interesting is that these little silver animals are hiding unexpected functions.
Well, unless you two are the youngest silver dealers I've ever set eyes on, I'm guessing that you must have been given this gorgeous collection of quite interesting silver. Is that the fair guess?
Yes.
Who gave it to you?
Well, it was our grannies, but before that it was our great-great-granddad.
The family history makes these silver pieces even more special. They are not just decorative objects, but items that were once designed to be used in everyday life. Among them, the small silver bird quickly became the center of attention when the expert revealed its real purpose.
Well, they're both lovely. We'll start with the bird. The bird is a pepper pot. His head comes off.
Yeah.
He was actually made about 150, 160 years ago.
Instead of creating an ordinary pepper shaker, the craftsman transformed it into a silver bird full of personality. The combination of function and imagination is the reason novelty silver pieces like this continue to attract collectors. And the bird was not the only fascinating object in the collection.
Your cow, again, good choice. This is what's known as a cow creamer. The reason he's a cow is because you open his back up here, you fill him full of cream, and then you pour the cream out of his mouth. And you pour, yeah, his mouth's got a little slot in there.
The cow creamer is another example of the creativity found in antique silver craftsmanship. Simple objects used at the table were transformed into playful, unique designs that later became collectible pieces. And after being kept through multiple generations, their true value was finally revealed.
The cow, because it's bigger. Your cow is worth somewhere in the order of 800 to 1,000 pounds. Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And your bird here is still a very lovely thing. He's worth sort of somewhere between 300 and 400 pounds.
From small family objects, this silver collection turned out to hold a surprising value. But more importantly, these pieces preserve the story of several generations. A silver bird or a cow creamer is not just an old household item. They are family treasures that continue to carry their history forward through time. Number 21. Paul Storr Silver-Gilt Triton Shell Salt Cellars. Continuing the countdown are objects originally created for something as simple as holding salt on a dining table. But the moment the expert saw them, he realized these were not ordinary pieces of silverware. Because in the hands of an exceptional craftsman, even a small functional object can become a miniature work of sculpture.
I must say, these are really wonderful sculptural objects. There's very little else you can say except they are marvellous pieces of sculpture. They are, of course, salt cellars, in fact. It's what they were designed to do.
What makes these salt cellars special is the combination of function and artistry. They were designed for use during meals, but every detail, from the shells to the Triton figures and mythological sea creatures, was crafted with remarkable skill. And their true importance is connected to one of the biggest names in the history of English silver.
These were made by this very famous goldsmith called Paul Storr. 3 of them were made in 1813, and this one was made actually in 1811. And you can see a date letter Q there, as opposed to all the rest, which have a date letter S for 1813.
Paul Storr was one of the most celebrated silversmiths of the Georgian period. His works are admired for their impressive designs, outstanding craftsmanship, and association with some of the most prestigious clients of the era. But what impressed the expert even more was that after more than 200 years, the quality of these salt cellars was still beautifully preserved.
The gilding on them is so wonderful. It's so thick and heavy. Just the quality of the work, everything is absolutely brilliant. They're not worn. All the chiseling on the little mermen here is absolutely brilliant. They are really tremendous, tremendous salt cellars.
From the thick silver-gilt surface to the tiny carved details on each figure, every element shows the skill behind their creation. These are not valuable simply because of the precious material. They represent history, design, and the work of one of the finest craftsmen of his generation. And that combination led to a valuation that completely surprised the owner.
If I had to buy these, either from a private house or at an auction or whatever, if I had to buy them, I think I'd have to be looking at £40,000.
Good Lord.
You do surprise me.
From small dining objects, the Paul Store salt cellars were revealed to be silver masterpieces worth around £40,000. Their value comes not only from the precious metal, but from the maker, the age, and the exceptional quality of the craftsmanship. Sometimes, an object created for the simplest purpose can become an important piece of art history. Number 22. Chinese jade boy on bottle gourd carving. Continuing the countdown are small jade carvings that hold far more meaning than their appearance first suggests. In Chinese culture, jade is admired not only for its beauty or precious material. Each carved figure can represent a wish, a story, or a symbol that has been passed down through generations.
These Chinese jade carvings, I like them because they all have a very specific meaning. This one here, which is a small boy on the back of a large bottle gourd, represents having many sons. But I particularly like this one here, which is a monkey and a peach.
That is what separates these jade carvings from ordinary decorative objects. The craftsman was not simply creating beautiful shapes, but also placing meaning into every detail. A child, a bottle gourd, or the image of a monkey with a peach can each tell its own story within Chinese culture.
The Monkey King, who was called Sun Wukong, he gate-crashed a party and he ate all the peaches of longevity. And ever since then, the monkey, together with a peach, in Chinese mythology, has been used to represent longevity.
These layers of symbolism are part of what makes jade carvings so appealing to collectors. Their value is not only based on size or the quality of the stone, but also on the craftsmanship, cultural meaning, and the artist's ability to transform a piece of jade into a small story. And the journey of this collection began many decades earlier.
Where did you get these from?
We bought them in Singapore when we were there in the 1970s. We were always told they were sleeve pieces.
Since the time they were purchased in Singapore, the market for Chinese jade has changed significantly. Pieces with beautiful material, skilled craftsmanship, and meaningful designs have become increasingly desirable among collectors. But the biggest surprise came from one carving with a more mysterious figure than the others.
This one here, I don't actually know the iconography. This is a mythical beast. It's a very curious animal. But the Chinese particularly like this stone which has these brownish inclusions in it. And I think this one could easily top £10,000 at auction. So I think you've got more than £20,000 here.
From jade pieces purchased during a trip many years ago, this collection was revealed to be worth more than £20,000. But the most fascinating part is not only the number. Each carving preserves a piece of culture and the imagination of the person who created it. From symbols of family and longevity to mysterious mythical creatures, these small pieces of jade prove that sometimes the biggest stories can be hidden inside the smallest details. Number 23. James Cock's Silver Swan Automaton. Continuing the countdown is a silver swan that is impressive not only because of its beautiful appearance. What makes it truly special is its ability to move, play music, and create the feeling of a real living creature appearing in front of the viewer. This is not just a silver artwork. It is a combination of art, engineering, and the imagination of the 18th century.
Well, here's Simon of the two great collectors, Josephine and John Bowes, and what many people regard as the centerpiece of their collection. Indeed, it's the very first thing you see as you come into the museum, this magnificent swan. It really is breathtaking, isn't it?
Yes, and it has a quite extraordinary history, too.
At that time, automatons were considered some of the most remarkable achievements in craftsmanship. Long before modern technology, machines capable of recreating natural movements could almost feel like magic. And the Silver Swan was created by James Cox, one of the most famous makers in this field.
In 1773, there was an Act of Parliament passed allowing James Cox, who was the most famous 18th century maker of these automaton pieces, to actually have a lottery which included 58 pieces on this scale. Well, it didn't sell in the lottery. It was sold in his bankrupt stock. He went broke some years later.
Interestingly, the journey of the Silver Swan did not begin as a treasure that was immediately desired by everyone. It went through many changes before becoming a historic icon. But over time, its rarity and almost impossible to recreate craftsmanship completely transformed the way people valued it.
It turned up at the 1867 exhibition in Paris on sale for £2,000. A couple of years later, the Bowes bought it for £200, and it came here.
What a bargain.
From an object that once changed hands for a surprising price, the Silver Swan gradually became one of the most famous surviving automatons. What takes it far beyond an ordinary sculpture is the complex mechanical system hidden inside. It does not simply recreate the appearance of a swan. It attempts to capture the movement and illusion of life itself.
Well, there are three movements. One controls the water, which is actually simulated by glass rods with swimming fish. The second one plays the music, and the third one, which is the most remarkable, actually controls the movements of the neck. Now, there are 111 individual silver collars, all linked together. There are vertebrae inside, linked together by minute chains.
These details are what transformed the silver swan into an 18th century mechanical wonder. Hundreds of tiny components have to work together precisely to create movements that appear smooth and natural. Using silver, gears, and imagination, James Cox created a piece that stands between art and science. A machine born from metal, yet one that still gives people the feeling of life moving within it. Number 24. Kaneda Kenjiro Bronze Sculpture. Continuing the countdown is a bronze sculpture that was loved long before its owner knew anything about its origin or value. What attracted her was not a famous name, but the unique feeling of the piece, a figure full of movement, almost like a brief moment from everyday life, had been captured forever in metal.
When I was a teenager, I saw this man at my godmother's house. She said, one day I'm going to put this in my will and it'll be yours. Recently, she just gave it to me. He's just something that I've always treasured because he's different.
What makes this sculpture special is the way the artist transformed a hard material into a scene full of life and energy. Instead of creating a formal, motionless pose, the sculptor captured an action that would normally last only a few seconds. And when the expert looked closer, he discovered the real story behind this mysterious figure.
So this fellow was working, and then the hat blows away, and it's blowing away on a wave.
Oh.
This is water. You can see it's kind of breaking and frothing and so on. It's shallow,
yes,
but it's water. He is in a rice field.
It turned out this was not simply a man striking a pose. It was the moment of a worker in a rice field reacting as his hat was blown away. That attention to movement, emotion, and ordinary life is what makes many Japanese bronze works so fascinating. But the most important clue was hidden in one tiny mark on the sculpture.
Right here is a little square mark, and it says a number of things, but what's important is that it says Kaneda, and that is the name of the sculptor.
The Kaneda mark completely changed the way the piece was understood. It was no longer just an interesting family object, but a bronze sculpture connected to a specific artist. From the dynamic pose and sense of movement to the careful balance of the bronze form, every detail showed an impressive level of craftsmanship. And finally, the true value of the piece was revealed.
For retail replacement purposes, I think a figure of $12,000 would be about right.
Really? I had no idea. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh my gosh, thank you.
From a sculpture treasured simply because it felt different, the piece was valued at around $12,000. But the most memorable part of the story is that the owner recognized something special about it long before she knew the artist's name or its market value. Years later, the expert only confirmed what she had felt from the beginning. This was never just an ordinary sculpture.